The music room was empty when Rosalind Merrick stepped inside, yet the silence still carried the echo of laughter. Sharp, feminine, cruel. She closed the door carefully, the way she did everything, without weight, without sound. At 32, she had learned how to take up little space. Afternoon light slipped through the green velvet curtains, painting golden bars across the oak floor. Her hands trembled as she set her shawl upon the chair. Poor Aunt Rosalind, so kind, so alone. Her eldest niece's voice, Victoria's, still rang in her mind like a cracked bell. She moved toward the piano and pressed a single key, C-sharp, just to feel something answer her touch. The note died too quickly. Beyond the window, the gardens of Hartfield Manor stretched in summer green, but Rosalind saw no beauty there. Only the same place where minutes earlier, society had looked through her, as if she were a piece of old furniture. She inhaled slowly, counted to 5. She would not cry. Not again. Then she heard footsteps in the hall, firm, masculine, out of place in that wing of the house. The door opened before she could compose her expression, and when she looked up, the most untouchable man in England was standing there, the light cutting his tall frame, and something in his gaze she could not name, something that felt like recognition. Introduction. Rosalind Merrick had long stopped expecting to be remembered. She had built an entire life around that certainty, helping her brother and sister-in-law raise the girls, managing the endless details of Hartfield Manor, and disappearing along the edges of ballrooms. She was the woman who held coats, who arranged flowers, who smiled politely while everyone else danced. Society had classified her long ago, the kind, harmless spinster. And she had accepted the label with the same quiet resignation with which she accepted English winters, until that afternoon. Alexander Granville, Duke of Winterbourne, was everything she was not, seen, wanted, impossible to ignore. Wealthy, impeccably bred, carrying war scars and eyes that seemed to weigh the soul of every person he met. Widowed for 3 years, he had refused every matchmaking mother in London. They said his heart lay buried beside his wife's grave. Rosalind believed it. After all, she understood what it meant to bury things. Their meeting in the music room should have meant nothing. Yet there was something in the way he looked at her, not through her, but at her, that shattered every certainty Rosalind had built to survive. As if, for the first time in her invisible life, someone had paused long enough to read the pages no one else bothered to open. This is a story about being forgotten, and about the moment someone finally remembers. If you've ever felt that, the world saved all its happy endings for everyone but you, stay. This story is yours. Tell me where you're watching from, your city, your corner of the world, and if it touched your heart, subscribe, because everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves a second chance to shine. Chapter 1. The Weight of Invisibility. Rosalind Merrick could no longer remember when she had begun to fade. Perhaps at 24, when the last suitor chose her younger cousin. Or at 28, when her dying mother whispered, "Forgive me, my dear, for never managing to see you wed." Now at 32, invisibility had become a habit, something she wore as easily as the muted dresses she chose, as naturally as the silence she cultivated at dinners. That morning in her brother's country house, she was arranging flowers in the front hall when she heard her youngest niece, Anne, only 14, speaking to the housekeeper. "Aunt Rosalind is so useful, isn't she? Father says he couldn't manage without her." The word useful settled in Rosalind's chest like ash. It wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was true. She finished the arrangement of white roses, aligning each stem with surgical precision, and slipped out the side door before anyone could see her. The July sun was warm over the gardens, and she walked toward the oak grove where she often went to breathe, far from eyes that never truly saw her. There she could pretend solitude was a choice, not a sentence. She sat on the grass, the hem of her grey linen gown darkening with damp, and allowed herself a rare luxury, to cry. Not in sobs, but in silent tears that slid down her cheeks as she watched the treetops sway. Useful. The word echoed. She didn't want to be useful. She wanted to be wanted. She wanted someone to walk into a room and look for her first. She wanted. "Lady Rosalind." The voice was deep, courteous, and completely unexpected. Rosalind turned sharply. Alexander Granville, Duke of Winterbourne, stood only a few steps away, the reins of a black stallion in his gloved hand, his grey eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. He must have just arrived. His riding coat still carried the dust of the road, and the horse was damp with sweat. "Forgive me," he said, and there was genuine warmth in his tone. "I didn't mean to intrude." Rosalind quickly wiped her face, mortified. She knew of the Duke, everyone did, but they had never been properly introduced. He belonged to a world far above hers, a world of titles, soirees, and expectations that rarely glanced her way. "Your Grace," she murmured, attempting to rise with dignity, and failing when her hem caught on her shoe. Without hesitation, he released the reins and reached to steady her. The touch was brief, gloved fingers against linen, but it changed the air between them. "Are you all right?" His tone was not formal now, it was concerned. Rosalind blinked, startled. No one asked her that. No one looked at her with that kind of liquid attention, as if every answer mattered. "I'm fine," she lied, because that was what one did. He didn't release her arm immediately. For 3 seconds, she counted. His hand remained there, steady and warm through the fabric. Then he stepped back, though his gaze never wavered. "It doesn't seem so," he said quietly. Something inside Rosalind cracked, not from pain, but from surprise. Someone was seeing her. Someone was paying attention. She opened her mouth, unsure of what to say. He waited, patient, unhurried, as if she were worth the wait. The wind stirred the oak leaves above them, and sunlight flickered across his face, and for the first time in years, Rosalind Merrick felt real. Chapter 2. A Miscalculation. Alexander Granville hadn't meant to stop. From a distance, he had noticed a woman sitting alone in the meadow, a quiet figure in grey, and his first instinct had been to turn away. Privacy, especially in country houses, was sacred, but something about the way she wiped her face, quick, ashamed, resigned, made him pull the reins. He dismounted, unsure why. Now, standing before her, he realized he didn't know her. Not formally. But there was something hauntingly familiar in the set of her shoulders, in the calm despair behind her eyes. She looked like a painting left too long in the sun, still beautiful but forgotten. He had come to Hartfield Manor that morning at Lord Hartfield's invitation, an old acquaintance from London society. He had accepted the offer because he needed to leave London, to escape the endless parade of ambitious mothers and their daughters. He hadn't come to feel. He had come to forget, to be dutiful, to stay buried where his heart lay, beside Catherine in the grave at Winterbourne. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, stepping back. Distance, he needed distance. "I'm a guest at Hartfield Manor, just arrived this morning." "The Duke of Winterbourne," she said softly. I know, of course she knew. Everyone did. Alexander Granville was a symbol, not a man. Wealth, lineage, and wounds polished into legend. Yet she didn't look at him like the others. There was no calculation in her gaze, only fatigue, recognition. "And you are?" "Rosalind Merrick," she replied. "Lord Hartfield's sister." "Lady Rosalind," he corrected automatically. Titles mattered even when nothing else did. She made a faint, dismissive gesture, as if titles belonged to another species of people entirely. For a long moment, Alexander studied her. The modest gown, the loosened strands of chestnut hair, the quiet strength behind her restraint, and he understood too late that he had made a mistake. The mistake was stopping, speaking, looking too long into the eyes of a woman whose sadness stirred something he thought had died. Not again, he thought. Not after Catherine. But then Rosalind smiled, small, fragile, heartbreakingly sincere, and he knew the mistake had already been made. Chapter 3. The Crack in the Armor. Rosalind did not return to the house immediately. She stayed in the grove until her legs stopped trembling, until she could put back on the mask of serenity she wore like armor. The Duke of Winterbourne had seen her crying. The Duke of Winterbourne had seen her. Both truths coexisted in her mind, one mortifying, the other impossible to comprehend. When she finally stepped through the kitchen door, the housekeeper, Mrs. Dawson, lifted her brows. "Where have you been, milady?" "The girls were looking for you." Of course they were, Rosalind thought without bitterness. She was the one who solved problems. who mended dresses, listened to confessions, soothed nightmares. "I went for a walk," she said simply, and went upstairs before the woman could ask more. That evening, at dinner, Rosalind took her usual place, the middle of the table, far enough not to draw attention, close enough to be useful should anyone need something. Her sister-in-law, Diana, presided over the head of the table with her customary cold grace, while the three nieces, Victoria, Charlotte, and Anne, chatted about the upcoming ball. Rosalind smiled at the proper moments, nodded when expected, poured wine for the guest beside her. And then she realized Alexander Granville was watching her, not overtly. But every time she lifted her gaze, she found his, dark grey, thoughtful, unsettlingly direct. He sat between Diana and Victoria, who monopolized his attention with endless questions about London, the court, the Queen. He answered politely, but his eyes kept returning to Rosalind. The fourth time their gazes met, heat rose up her neck. He didn't look away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, a small, silent question. "Are you better?" Rosalind swallowed and gave the tiniest nod, quick, embarrassed. He smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was private, complicit, the kind of smile that said, "I see you." As if they shared a secret the rest of the table would never understand, Victoria noticed. Rosalind saw her niece's brow tighten as she followed the Duke's gaze, landing on her, curious then suspicious. "Aunt Rosalind," Victoria said suddenly, too loudly, "don't you think the lavender gown suits me better than the blue?" It was a trap. Victoria knew her too well. Rosalind always agreed, always appeased, always vanished behind her own civility. But this time, with the Duke's eyes still fixed on her, Rosalind heard herself say, "I think you look lovely in any color, dear. But perhaps you should wear what you prefer, not what others expect." The silence that followed was brief but thick enough to cut. Victoria blinked, startled. Diana's eyes narrowed. And Alexander Granville, good heavens, smiled more openly as though Rosalind had just done something extraordinarily brave. Perhaps she had. Because for the first time in her life she hadn't disappeared. She had refused to be invisible, and the first crack in the armor that had protected her heart for so long widened, just enough for the light to get in. Chapter 4. The Weight of Memory. Alexander Granville should not have been thinking about her. Yet while Victoria Hartfield chattered endlessly about the upcoming ball, and Diana offered him port with her carefully measured smile, his mind kept drifting back to the woman seated 6 chairs away. Rosalind Merrick. There was something about her that unsettled him, not unpleasantly, but like an old melody half forgotten, suddenly remembered. She reminded him of Catherine. Not in appearance. Catherine had been tall, fair, with a laugh that filled every room, but in quietness, in the way she occupied space, as if apologizing for existing. Catherine had been like that in the early months of their marriage, before Alexander had taught her she deserved to be heard. "Before I killed her," whispered the cruel voice in his mind. His hand tightened around the wineglass until it threatened to crack. No, he would not think of that now. He would not dig again through the guilt he carried, like a stone pressed to his ribs. Catherine had died of childbed fever, 3 days after giving birth to a stillborn son. The physicians had said there was nothing to be done, but Alexander knew better. He had been the one to make her pregnant. He had been the one to insist they remain in Winterbourne, far from London's skilled doctors. He had doomed her, and no rational absolution would ever erase that truth. "Your Grace." Diana Hartfield's silken tone pulled him back. "You seem distant." "My apologies," he said automatically. Merely fatigue from travel. A lie, but no one questioned him. No one ever questioned a duke. Except apparently Rosalind Merrick, who at that very moment was calmly telling her niece to choose the color she preferred, rather than what others expected. Alexander watched Victoria blink in surprise. He saw Diana's brows draw together in quiet disapproval. And he felt something dangerously close to pride. Brave, he thought. Small, but brave. Then Rosalind lifted her gaze and caught him looking. Again. Color rose in her cheeks, a soft blush that spread from her collarbone to the apples of her cheeks before she looked away. But Alexander saw the smallest curve of a smile she tried to hide behind her glass. This was dangerous. He could not allow it to continue. He had come to Hartfield Manor out of obligation. not to find himself intrigued by quiet women with sorrowful eyes, not to feel his heart stir after 3 years of deliberate stillness. Catherine, he reminded himself fiercely. Remember, Catherine. Remember what happens when you let someone close. And yet, when the dinner finally ended and the guests began to disperse, Alexander found himself moving toward Rosalind without thought. She stood near the window, adjusting her shawl, preparing, as always, to vanish into the edges of the room. "Lady Rosalind," he said softly. She turned too quickly, eyes wide. "Your Grace." "Thank you," he said, because it was the only thing that felt honest. Her brow furrowed. "For what?" "For not disappearing tonight." The words escaped before he could stop them. Rosalind's lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes glimmered, not with tears, but with something perilously like hope. And Alexander Granville knew he had made another mistake. Perhaps the greatest of them all. Chapter 5. The sound of a breaking heart. For the next 3 days, Rosalind Merrick did everything in her power to avoid Alexander Granville. It wasn't difficult. He spent his mornings riding with her brother, and his afternoons locked away in the library. But knowing he was there, breathing the same air, filling the same silence, was its own sweet torture. "Thank you for not disappearing tonight." The words lingered, haunting her like a melody she could neither forget nor hum aloud. No one had ever said such a thing to her. On the morning of the ball, Diana gathered Rosalind and the girls in the drawing room to discuss their gowns. Victoria would wear sky blue, Charlotte pale rose, Han white with golden ribbons, and you, Rosalind? Diana asked absently, eyes fixed on a piece of embroidery. The usual, Rosalind said. The grey one, Diana nodded, already uninterested. But Victoria laughed, a sharp tinkling sound that cut through the air. Aunt Rosalind, you always wear grey, or brown. It's as if you want to disappear. The words were playful in tone but merciless in truth. They landed like a blade, because it was true. Rosalind had spent years perfecting invisibility, weaving it into her very skin. Perhaps, Charlotte said softly, Aunt Rosalind should wear something brighter. For a change, there was kindness in her voice, and somehow that hurt even more. Rosalind forced a smile. I'd hate to outshine you, dears. Impossible, Victoria laughed again, and this time Diana smiled with her. The room seemed to shrink. The air grew thin. Rosalind rose slowly, murmured something about checking the flower arrangements, and slipped out before anyone could see the tears pressing at her lashes. This time she didn't go to the garden. She went to her room, locked the door, sat on the edge of her bed with trembling hands, invisible. The word chased her like a shadow. She looked into the mirror, at the dull brown hair, the reddened eyes, the grey gown that felt more like mourning attire than clothing. When had she last worn colour? When had she last allowed herself to want to be seen? A knock broke the silence. Lady Rosalind. Alexander's voice cut through the wood like a heated blade. She froze. No, not now. Not like this. I'm fine, Your Grace. No, you're not. There was a pause. May I come in? She should have said no. She should have preserved the fragile boundaries that kept her safe. But instead, she heard the click of the latch as she opened the door, just a fraction. He stood there in his riding clothes, dark hair tousled by the wind, eyes sharp with something between anger and concern. And when he looked at her, his expression changed, hardened, protective. Who made you cry? It wasn't a question. It was a demand. Rosalind shook her head. No one. It's nothing. It isn't. He stepped forward. She retreated instinctively. He stopped, hands raised in quiet surrender. Rosalind, the sound of her name, uttered without title, was shockingly intimate. Forbidden. Tell me. And because she was tired, because she was cracked open and no longer able to lie, Rosalind spoke the truth. My niece said I'm invisible, she whispered. And she's right, I am. I've always been. Her voice splintered, but she kept going. For one foolish moment I thought perhaps I wasn't. I thought maybe you saw me. But that was an illusion. Men like you don't see women like me. Alexander was very still. Then slowly, improperly, dangerously, unavoidably, he stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. You're wrong, he said softly, his voice roughened by something fierce and unguarded. I see you, Rosalind Merrick. I see you so clearly it hurts to look. And the heart of the woman who had long ago stopped hoping broke. not from sorrow but from the unbearable weight of being seen. Chapter 6. The confession and the fear. Alexander should never have entered that room. He knew it the moment he crossed the threshold, yet seeing her retreat there, small and broken, believing the lie the world had told her, had been too much. He was not a man of impulse. 3 years of mourning had turned him into something measured, mechanical, a man of restraint. But Rosalind Merrick dismantled his control with terrifying ease. "I see you," he said again, because she looked at him as if she couldn't believe it. "I see the way you care for your nieces even when they do not notice. I see how you fade into the background at dinners so others can shine. I see the woman who cried alone in the woods because she learned long ago that her tears made people uncomfortable." He took one step closer. She didn't move away this time. "And I see the woman who last night found the courage to speak the truth at a table where everyone lies for the sake of politeness." Rosalind trembled, not from fear, but from the dizzying terror of being seen for the first time. He recognized that feeling. Catherine had felt it too when he'd proposed, when she'd realized he'd chosen her not for wealth or beauty, but because he saw her. And it had destroyed her. "Stop," the voice in his head warned. "Don't do this. Don't endanger another woman just because you're too selfish to be alone." "Your Grace," Rosalind whispered, eyes glistening. "Please, don't be kind to me. I don't know how to bear it." Something inside Alexander cracked. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to retreat, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. Just a touch, skin to skin, warm and trembling. Rosalind closed her eyes as if the contact burned. "You deserve kindness," he said hoarsely. "You deserve to be seen. You deserve more than this house will ever give you. I don't deserve you." Her voice was so soft he almost didn't hear it, but he did. And it hurt far more than it should have. "You don't know me," he said, and the hardness returned to his tone. He dropped his hand and stepped back, and 1, 2, 3 paces. He needed distance. He needed air. "If you knew who I was, what I've done, you wouldn't look at me that way." Rosalind's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He turned to the window. He couldn't bear to face her while he said it. "I killed my wife." The silence was absolute. He went on, voice stripped of emotion. "Catherine died of fever after childbirth. Our son didn't survive either, and it was my fault. I was the one who made her pregnant. I was the one who insisted we stay in Winterbourne, far from London's best physicians. His voice faltered. "I killed her because I wanted an heir." He waited for the horror, for her to flinch, recoil, scream, for her to see him, and finally, for what he was. But what came instead were quiet steps. And then her hands, small, uncertain, touching his back. "Alexander," she said. "His name, not his title. Soft as a prayer. You didn't kill her. It was a tragedy. It was my fault," he cut in, turning toward her. She was so close he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the amber hidden in her brown eyes. "And I can't do this again. So I can't put another person in danger just because I'm too selfish to be alone." Rosalind cupped his face in her hands, a bold gesture for someone so gentle. "Then don't ask," she whispered. "Don't ask me to stay because I wouldn't know how to refuse. And we both know this can't happen." She was giving him an escape. She was braver than he was. Alexander should have taken it. He should have left that room and never looked back. But instead, he lowered his head and kissed her, softly, desperately, like a man drowning who had just found air for the last time. And in that moment, he knew with devastating certainty that it was already far too late for redemption. Chapter 7. The Surrender and the Light. Rosalind Merrick had never known it was possible to feel so many things at once. Joy, terror, desire, guilt, all colliding like storms in her chest. The kiss had lasted only seconds, yet when Alexander pulled away, it felt as though the world itself had shifted beneath her feet. He looked shattered, as if he'd just made the gravest mistake of his life. "Forgive me," he said hoarsely. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't ask forgiveness," Rosalind interrupted, her voice steadier than she thought it could be. "Not when it was the only right thing that's happened in years." Alexander closed his eyes, as if her words had struck him hard. When he opened them again, there was surrender there and fear. "You don't understand the danger you're in," he said quietly. "I do," she replied. "I understand that you're a man who believes he doesn't deserve love, that you'll fight every feeling that grows between us, that you'll test me at every turn, waiting for me to walk away. She stepped closer, voice unwavering now. I understand that you'll try to send me away because you think you're protecting me. And I understand that if I stay, I'll have to be brave when all my life I've been taught to be small. Her gaze locked on his. I understand perfectly, Alexander. And still, I choose to stay. I choose you. Something inside him broke. Alexander reached for her, not gently this time, but with desperate hunger, and kissed her like a man who had been drowning for 3 years and finally found air. Rosalind clung to him, her fingers curling against his shoulders, her heart pounding so fiercely it almost hurt. This is real, she thought in disbelief. He's here. He's holding me. I'm being seen. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unevenly. Alexander rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. I can't promise you happiness, he whispered. I don't even know if I remember how to give that. I don't want promises, Rosalind said softly. I want truth. I want you, with all your scars and guilt. I want to be the person you choose when the whole world tells you not to choose anyone. You're mad, he murmured, though a faint, broken smile touched his lips. Probably, she breathed, smiling back. Then they heard voices in the hallway, Victoria and Charlotte, chatting excitedly about the ball. Alexander stepped back instantly, the mask of the composed Duke sliding into place. But before leaving, he caught Rosalind's hand, quick, intimate, electric, and said under his breath, Wear red tonight. Rosalind blinked. What? At the ball? Wear red, not grey, not brown. His eyes gleamed with something dangerous, almost defiant. Wear red and dance with me. Let the whole society that's ignored you see that you exist. That you're mine. The possessive word should have frightened her. Instead, warmth spread through her chest, down to her trembling fingertips. I don't have a red dress, she whispered. Alexander smiled, a real smile this time, devastating and beautiful. I've taken care of that. It will arrive before the ball. He lifted her fingers to his lips, an old-fashioned, reckless gesture, and kissed them. Then he was gone before she could speak again. Rosalind stood alone in the quiet room, her heart racing. She turned toward the mirror, and the woman staring back was no longer invisible. No longer muted, no longer grey. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly undone, her eyes alive. For the first time in 32 years, Rosalind Merrick was ready to be seen. Epilogue. When the world finally sees, the red dress arrived 2 hours before the ball. Crimson silk trimmed with black lace, daring but never vulgar, perfect for a woman who had spent her whole life hidden. Rosalind slipped it on with trembling hands, while her maid pinned soft curls at her nape. When she descended the grand staircase, every head turned. Diana gasped. Victoria went pale. And Alexander Granville, waiting at the bottom in flawless black evening attire, smiled as if she were the only person alive. Breathtaking, he murmured, offering his arm. Rosalind took it, feeling the steadiness of him, the certainty. They entered the ballroom together, and the murmur of conversation died instantly. Rosalind Merrick, the invisible spinster, in blazing red silk on the arm of England's most desired duke. It was scandalous. It was impossible. It was perfect. Alexander led her to the center of the floor as the orchestra began a waltz. He didn't ask permission. He simply placed a hand at her waist, interlaced his fingers with hers, and drew her into motion. He danced flawlessly, but of course he did. But Rosalind no longer cared about steps or rhythm. What mattered was the way he looked at her, as if she were something precious he had finally learned how to cherish. They're all watching, she whispered. Let them, Alexander replied, and there was defiance in his tone. Then, in the center of the room, before the entire world that had ignored her, he stopped, released her hand, and knelt. The ballroom gasped as one. Rosalind froze. Alexander, what are you? Rosalind Merrick, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner. You taught me that life can begin even after we believe it has ended. You taught me that being seen is a gift, not a burden. And if you'll accept me, with all my flaws and ghosts, I'll spend the rest of my days ensuring you never feel invisible again. He opened his hand. An emerald ring gleamed under the chandeliers. Marry me. Rosalind looked around, but her nieces' mouths agape. At Diana, stunned into silence, at an entire society holding its breath. Then she looked back at Alexander, the man who had seen her when no one else ever had, who had chosen love when every instinct urged him to stay safe. "Yes," she said, her voice clear as a bell. 1,000 times, yes." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, rose and kissed her, long, deep, scandalously public. And when they finally parted, applause erupted. Laughter, cheers, blessings. For the first time in her life, the world saw her. And she no longer needed to hide. As the sound swelled around her, Rosalind could barely breathe, not from the shock or the dress, but from the overwhelming truth. The same world that had looked through her for decades was now seeing her. Every gaze seemed to whisper she exists, and for a moment, time itself bowed to that truth. Alexander still held her hand steady and warm. The emerald weighed on her finger like an ancient promise. Somewhere at the edge of the room, a single note, C-sharp, rang from the piano. The same note she had played years ago, when she believed nothing in her life would last. But this time the note endured. It stayed and stayed. Alexander looked at the woman before him and felt the world rearrange itself. For years, silence had been his punishment, the echo of everything he'd lost. Now that same silence became redemption. There was no guilt in her eyes, only tenderness. And as the ballroom erupted in applause once more, he understood. This was not a duke begging forgiveness. It was a man finding peace. Catherine could rest. And he, finally, could live. Outside, the wind stirred the green velvet curtains, the same ones that had once filtered light over an invisible woman. Now that woman walked through those doors unhurried, unafraid, her red dress rippling like living flame. Behind her, Alexander followed in quiet awe, the sound of the piano echoing through the night. It was no longer the lament of the past, but the full, resonant chord of two souls finally seen. And the C-sharp lingered, sustaining, healing, belonging,